Welcome to the deep dive where we sift through piles of information so you don't have to.
All right.
Today we are going to be taking a look at notarization.
Yes.
To help us decode those stamps and seals, we've got Eddie Montez Travis and Marilyn Lee Trotter here.
Happy to be here.
They're going to break down these notarial acts in plain English and explain when you might need them.
Exactly.
Consider this your Notary 101.
Your crash course.
So when I think notary, I picture those official-looking stamps.
Right.
But I have to admit, I'm a little fuzzy on what they actually do.
Well, it's more than just a stamp.
Okay.
A notary acts as an impartial witness, making sure the person signing a document is who they say they are.
Yeah.
That they're signing willingly and that their identity checks out.
Right.
Think of it as a safeguard against fraud.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's about verification,
Right.
not necessarily the content of the document itself.
Precisely. We're not lawyers evaluating the document's legality, but we do play a key role in establishing authenticity.
Okay.
It's about creating a reliable record.
It's fascinating to think about how long notaries have been around. I read that ancient scribes in Egypt and Rome served a similar purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible that this role has persisted for centuries.
Absolutely. And that historical context really highlights the significance of notarization across so many aspects of life, from personal documents like wills and powers of attorney to business contracts, real estate transactions, and even international agreements.
Wow, I had no idea the scope was so broad.
Yeah.
So let's break it down. What are some of these notarial acts that you perform?
There are several, each with its own specific purpose. Some of the most common are acknowledgments, jurats, signature witnessing, copy certifications, and certified tangible copies of electronic record.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. Maybe we could start with acknowledgments. What exactly does it mean to acknowledge a document?
An acknowledgment confirms that the person signing a document is who they say they are and that they're signing willingly.
Okay.
It's primarily about verifying identity and consent.
So, for example, if I were signing a mortgage or a deed for a house, that would require an acknowledgement.
That's a perfect example.
Okay.
You want to be absolutely sure it's actually you signing those documents and that you're doing it voluntarily. That's where the acknowledgement comes in.
It's like an extra layer of security.
It is.
Now, you mentioned jurats, too.
Right.
How are those different?
With a jurat, the focus shifts from the signing itself to the content of the document.
Okay.
The signer swears or affirms, under penalty of perjury, that the statements in the document are true.
So it's more about the truthfulness of the information than just the signature itself.
Precisely. Jurats are often used for affidavits and sworn statements, where the signer's declaration under oath carries legal weight.
It sounds like something you'd see in a courtroom drama.
Exactly.
Sworn and subscribed. It definitely adds a level of seriousness to the proceedings.
Yes, it does. Now, I know you mentioned a few other notarial acts earlier.
Right.
Perhaps we could delve into those a bit further.
Absolutely. Let's move on to signature witnessing.
Yeah. Ooh.
What exactly does a notary do in that scenario?
Signature witnessing is more straightforward.
Okay.
The notary simply observes the signing, verifies the signer's identity, and documents it in their journal. It's about confirming that the signature is authentic.
So it's less about the content of the document and more about the act of signing itself.
Exactly. You typically use this for basic contracts and agreements where a simple signature verification is all that's needed.
That makes sense. It seems like each of these notarial acts serves a distinct purpose depending on the type of document and the level of verification required.
You're catching on quickly. Now let's shift gears to copy certification. Have you ever needed a verified copy of a document for official purposes?
Oh, all the time. Whether it's a copy of my lease, driver's license, or an academic transcript, they always seem to need some kind of official stamp or seal.
That's precisely what copy certification is for.
Okay.
The notary compares a copy to the original document and verifies that it's a true and accurate reproduction.
Okay.
It gives that copy official weight.
It sounds pretty straightforward, but I'm curious. Can a notary certify copies of any document?
That's a great question. It's important to remember that not all states allow notaries to certify copies.
Oh.
And even in states that do, there might be specific limitations. For example, some states might only allow certification for certain types of documents, like powers of attorney.
So it's always best to check with the notary or the specific state's laws before assuming a document can be certified.
Absolutely. You don't want to run into any surprises. Now let's talk about the last notarial act I mentioned, which is particularly relevant in our increasingly digital world: certified tangible copies of electronic records.
That sounds intriguing. Is that basically a digital copy that's been printed and then certified?
You got it. This is becoming more common with the rise of remote notarization. Sometimes a document is notarized electronically, but you might need a physical copy for court, a government office, or your own records. That's where a certified tangible copy comes in.
So it's like bridging the gap between the digital and physical world.
Right.
The notary ensures the printed copy accurately reflects the original electronic document and adds their seal to verify it.
Exactly. It's all about ensuring authenticity and providing a tangible record when needed.
Okay.
And speaking of convenience, there are services like Mobile Notary by Derek Spruill that can come to you for all your notary needs.
Oh, wow.
Especially in Northern Virginia.
I was just about to bring that up. It sounds incredibly convenient, especially in our fast-paced world.
It really is. And, before we move on, I think it's important to address some common misconceptions about notaries.
I think that's a fantastic idea. I bet our listeners have some questions about what notaries can and can't do.
Right.
Let's do some myth busting.
Let's do it. Myth busting is always a good idea. Let's clear up some of those misconceptions.
All right, first up. Can notaries give legal advice?
That's a myth I hear quite often.
Yeah.
Unless a notary is also a licensed attorney, they absolutely cannot provide legal advice. Their role is strictly as an impartial witness, not a legal counselor.
So if I'm unsure about the content of a document or need legal guidance, I should consult with an attorney.
Exactly.
Not rely on the notary for that information.
Precisely. It's essential to remember that notaries are primarily focused on verifying identities and signatures, not interpreting legal language or advising on legal matters.
Got it. Now here's another one I've heard. Does a notary's stamp make a document automatically legal?
That's another common misconception. A notary's stamp verifies the identity and signature.
Okay.
But it doesn't automatically make the document's content legally binding or valid.
It seems like there's a lot of nuance to this. It's not as simple as just getting a stamp on a piece of paper.
You're absolutely right. There are specific legal requirements that must be met for a document to be considered legally sound.
This is all really helpful. Okay, one last myth to bust. Can a notary refuse service based on their personal beliefs?
This is a big one, and the answer is a resounding no. Notaries are public officials and are obligated to serve anyone who meets the legal requirements, regardless of their personal beliefs.
That makes sense. They need to remain impartial and unbiased in their role.
Exactly. It's about upholding the integrity and fairness of the process. So we've talked about the different types of notarial acts and busted some common myths.
Yeah.
Maybe we could dig a little deeper into the requirements for becoming a notary.
Absolutely. I'm curious about what it takes to become that trusted, impartial witness.
Well, it's not as simple as just showing up with a stamp.
Right.
There are specific laws and procedures in place to ensure the process is carried out legally and ethically. It starts with becoming a certified notary.
So there's some kind of formal training involved.
Yes. In most states, you need to complete a training course and pass an exam to become a certified notary.
That makes sense. You're dealing with important legal documents.
Right.
So it's crucial to have a solid understanding of the laws and procedures involved.
Absolutely. And it doesn't stop there. We also have to follow strict guidelines for verifying someone's identity. We can't just take their word for it.
So what's involved in that process? What kind of identification do you need to see?
We usually need to see a government-issued photo ID, like a driver's license or passport. And of course, those IDs need to be current and valid.
Of course, yeah. You wouldn't want someone using an expired ID to try and get a document notarized.
Exactly. We have to be very diligent about checking those details. But it's not just about checking IDs. We also have to make sure the person signing the document is doing it willingly.
Right.
And without any pressure or coercion.
That's so important, especially with sensitive documents like wills or powers of attorney, where someone might be vulnerable or susceptible to influence.
You're right. That's why we're trained to look for any signs of duress or undue influence. If we suspect something's not right, we're obligated to refuse to notarize the document.
It sounds like notaries have a lot of responsibility beyond just stamping papers. It's about upholding the integrity of the whole process.
That's a great way to put it. We are, in a sense, guardians of authenticity, ensuring that documents are signed properly and legally.
It sounds like a crucial role in preventing fraud and protecting people's interests.
Right.
Speaking of protecting those interests, what about the notary's journal? What's that all about?
The notary's journal. It's a chronological record of every notarial act we perform. We document specific details about each transaction, including the date, the type of document, the signer's names, and how we verified their identity.
So it's a comprehensive log of everything you do as a notary.
Precisely. And it's not just for our own record keeping. These journals are incredibly important because they can be used as evidence in legal proceedings.
Wow. So if a document's authenticity is ever questioned, the notary's journal can help verify what happened.
Exactly. It's all part of our accountability and helps to maintain the integrity of the notary process. Now, I know we've touched on the different types of notarial acts.
Right.
But perhaps we could revisit those and delve into the nuances of when each type is used.
I think that would be really helpful. We've covered a lot of ground, but it's always good to reinforce those key concepts.
All right, let's start with acknowledgments. These are quite common in real estate transactions, like when someone is signing a deed or a mortgage.
Right. And we talked about how acknowledgments verify that you're the one signing and that you're doing it willingly. But are there different types of acknowledgments?
That's a great question. And yes, there are. For example, there's a specific type of acknowledgment used for corporations or businesses where an authorized representative is signing on behalf of the company.
That makes sense. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation. The notary needs to tailor the acknowledgement to the specific circumstances.
Exactly. And that's why it's important to choose a notary who has experience and expertise in the type of documents you're dealing with.
So if I'm buying a house, I should look for a notary who specializes in real estate transactions.
That would be ideal. They'll be familiar with all the specific requirements and can ensure everything is done correctly.
Okay, so we've covered acknowledgments in more detail. What about jurats? When might I need one of those?
Jurats are often used for affidavits, sworn statements, and other documents where the signer is making a declaration under oath or affirmation.
Right, because it's not just about signing the document. It's about swearing to the truthfulness of what's written in it.
Exactly. For example, if you're filing a legal complaint or providing testimony in court, you might need to sign a sworn statement that includes a jurat.
It adds that extra layer of legal weight and accountability.
Absolutely. And as the notary, I'm responsible for administering the oath or affirmation and making sure the signer understands the gravity of what they're doing.
So you're not just passively observing the signing, you're actively involved in the process.
That's right. It's about ensuring that the declaration is made freely and with full understanding of the consequences. Now, how about we move on to signature witnessing?
Yes, let's talk more about that. When is that typically used?
Signature witnessing is often used for documents where the primary concern is verifying the authenticity of the signature itself.
Like those basic contracts or agreements we discussed earlier, where you just need someone to confirm that you signed it.
Precisely. It's a more straightforward process than an acknowledgement or a jurat. We simply observe the signing, verify the signer's identity, and document it in our journal.
It's like having an official witness to make sure everything is above board. But what about copy certification? When might someone need that?
Copy certification is used when you need a copy of a document to be considered a true and accurate representation of the original.
All right, like when you need a certified copy of your birth certificate or your diploma.
Yeah.
But we did touch on the fact that not all states allow notaries to certify copies.
That's a crucial point to remember. It's always best to check your state's laws. And even in states that do allow copy certification, there might be limitations on what types of documents can be certified.
It sounds like it's always a good idea to consult with a notary or check your state's regulations if you're ever unsure.
Absolutely. Better safe than sorry when it comes to legal documents. Speaking of navigating the legal landscape, we've seen a rise in electronic documents and notarizations. That brings us to our last notarial act, certified tangible copies of electronic records.
Right, we were discussing that earlier. It's fascinating how notaries are adapting to this increasingly digital world.
It really is. And this specific act addresses the need for a physical, printed copy of a digitally notarized document.
Like if you need to submit a hard copy to a court or government agency?
Exactly. In those cases, a notary can print the electronic document, compare it to the original electronic record to ensure accuracy, and then add their seal and signature to create a certified tangible copy.
It's like bridging the gap between the digital and physical worlds. This whole discussion has been so enlightening. I feel like I'm finally starting to understand the nuances of these different notarial acts and when they're used.
I'm glad to hear that. It's important to be aware of these different types of notarizations because they can have significant legal implications. And speaking of which, did you know that in Northern Virginia there's a service called Mobile Notary by Derek Spruill?
Yes, we touched on that earlier. It sounds like such a convenient option, especially for people with busy schedules.
It is. They come to you for all your notary needs, convenience and expertise all in one. Now, I'm sure our listeners still have some questions about notaries. Why don't we take a moment to address some of those frequently asked questions?
Let's dive into those frequently asked questions. I bet the first one on everyone's mind is, how much does it cost to get a document notarized?
That's a very practical question. And the answer depends on where you are. Notary fees are typically set by state law.
Okay.
In Virginia, for example, the maximum fee for a single notarial act is $10.
Okay.
Other states might have different fee structures.
So it's not a huge expense, but it's good to be aware of those potential costs. What about finding a notary? How do I even locate one near me?
Well, you've got several options. Many banks and shipping stores have notaries on staff. I'd even spot a notary at your local grocery store or library.
Oh, that's right. I have seen signs for notary services in some unexpected places.
Yes, they're becoming increasingly common. And of course, there are always online directories or, a simple notary near me search online.
Right.
And for ultimate convenience, there are mobile notaries who can meet you wherever you need them.
Like Mobile Notary by Derek Spruill, we mentioned earlier. They serve Northern Virginia and can handle everything from real estate closings to more routine notarial acts. So let's say I found a notary. What should I bring to the appointment?
Always bring the document you need notarized and make sure it's fully completed and signed by all necessary parties.
Okay.
Don't forget a valid government-issued photo ID, like a driver's license or passport.
Right.
The notary needs to verify your identity before they can proceed.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's all about ensuring a secure and legitimate process. Now, here's a question I've been wondering about. Can a notary refuse to notarize a document?
Yes, there are certain circumstances where a notary is obligated to refuse service. If we suspect fraud, forgery, or coercion, we must decline to notarize the document.
So it's not just a rubber stamp. There's an ethical dimension to the role.
Absolutely. We also can't notarize documents that are incomplete, illegible, or if the signer isn't present. And we always have to make sure the signer understands what they're signing.
That raises an interesting question. Can a notary notarize a document in a language they don't understand?
That's a good one. We're not required to understand the content of the document itself, but we do need to be able to communicate with the signer and verify that they understand what they're signing.
So a language barrier could pose a challenge.
It could. In those cases, you might need to find a notary who speaks the signer's language or use a certified translator.
Right.
Clear communication is essential.
It sounds like attention to detail and a commitment to ethical conduct are crucial for a notary.
Yes.
So, last question. If this all sounds intriguing, can anyone become a notary?
The requirements vary by state, but generally you need to be at least 18 years old, a legal resident of the state, and have a clean criminal record. You'll usually need to complete a training course, pass an exam, and submit an application.
It doesn't sound overly complicated.
Not at all. It's a rewarding path for those who enjoy working with legal documents, paying close attention to detail, and upholding the law.
Well, Marilyn, Eddie, thank you both so much for taking us on this deep dive into the world of notarization. It's been truly fascinating.
It's been our pleasure. We hope our listeners feel more informed and confident about navigating the notary process.
I'm sure they do. We've covered so much ground, the different types of notarial acts, the responsibilities of a notary, even those intriguing historical roots. And we busted some myths along the way.
Absolutely. And don't forget about those convenient mobile notary services like Derek Spruill's in Northern Virginia. They make the process so much easier.
Exactly. So the next time you encounter a document that needs notarization, remember what you've learned today. And if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to ask a notary. They're there to guide you through the process.
We are indeed.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, and keep diving deep.